New toll rates at the 3 Cross Harbour tunnels after the government takes over ownership of the Western Harbour crossing. Employers of Indonesian domestic helpers may have to fork out more than $20,000 during the hiring process in future. And a powerful typhoon batters Okinawa and other islands in southwestern Japan. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The government today officially took over the operations of the Western Harbour crossing. New toll rates are also in place for the city's 3 Cross Harbour tunnels in a bid to redistribute traffic flow among the crossings and ease congestion. As traffic jams could still be seen during the morning rush hour, the transport chief said it would take some time for drivers to change their habits. Jackie Lin with more details.
Under the new 633 fixed toll scheme, the toll fee for private cars using the Western Harbour crossing has been lowered from $75 to $60. Traffic started to get busier at around 8 a.m. With a toll reduction, 3% more motorists used the Western Harbour crossing during the morning rush hour. Confusion, too, ensued. As the Western Harbour crossing has yet to implement the Hong Kong e-toll system, some taxis seen driving right through the toll booths were stopped and asked to pay manually. Some drivers got off their vehicles and walked back to the booths to ask how they should pay the tolls. Over to the Cross Harbour Tunnel in Hong Kong, the usual site of the morning rush hour congestion. That's despite the 50% toll hike for private cars from $20 to $30. It's the tunnel's first toll hike since 1999. The volume of morning peak hour traffic was said to have decreased by around 4%. As for the Eastern Harbour crossing, where the toll for private cars has gone up from $25 to $30, a slight drop of 1% in morning traffic was recorded. Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung said the traffic conditions are largely smooth after inspecting the Western Harbour crossing. Lam said it will take some time for motorists to change their cross-harbour habit. He said the government is looking set to implement the time-adjusted tolling arrangement by the end of the year to discourage drivers from using the crossings during the peak hour. The Western Harbour crossing and the Eastern Harbour crossing will also adopt the Hong Kong e-toll system at 5 a.m. on August 6th and 27th, respectively. After the implementation, drivers will no longer have to stop and queue at toll booths, but can just pay via vehicle tax. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Now a look at the moment when the government took over ownership of the Western Harbour crossing. As the stroke of midnight, toll booth operations were suspended for 5 minutes to update the tolling system. Staff from the Western Harbour Tunnel Company left the toll plaza, marking the end of the entity's 30-year franchise. At the Eastern Harbour crossing, manual toll booths were also closed for 5 minutes at midnight to update the payment system. Starting today, Cross Harbour taxis will be charged an all-day fixed toll of $25 for all 3 harbour tunnels. The fare adjustment came after the government reclaimed ownership of the Western Harbour crossing and started the 633 fixed toll plan. Mimo Sangai with more.
This was the scene at the Western Harbour crossing during rush hour in the morning. Many taxi drivers were spotted using the tunnel after an all-day flat rate of $25 was imposed just for taxis. The adjustment is part of the 633 fixed toll scheme. However, taxi passengers will still need to pay the additional outbound and return toll. For instance, to pass through the Cross Harbour Tunnel before today, it will have cost the passengers $10 outbound and return toll, a total charge of $20. Under the new scheme, passengers boarding from non-Cross Harbour taxi stands are required to pay $50, meaning $25 each way. Passengers travelling via the Eastern Harbour crossing will also be charged for $50. Meanwhile, the extra fare for the Western Harbour crossing decreases from $85 to $50. What does the public think of the taxi fare adjustments? This woman said while the extra cost of travelling the Western Harbour crossing has become cheaper, the charge for the Cross Harbour Tunnel could have been lowered. She hopes the fixed toll scheme can achieve its aim, to create a more balanced flow of traffic across the 3 tunnels. This taxi driver believes some passengers will choose a cheaper route by requesting him to use the Western Harbour crossing instead of the other two Royal Harbour tunnels. The scheme also removes the lower charge policy for an empty taxi at the Eastern Harbour crossing, a beneficial measure for drivers with no passengers on board. Memos 9, TVB News.
The Indonesian government is planning to roll out a new rule requiring employers to shoulder all agency fees when hiring Indonesian domestic helpers. Hong Kong employers might need to fork out more than $20,000, up from the previous $12,000 to $18,000. Jackie Lin with the different takes on the possible policy change.
Among some 340,000 foreign domestic helpers working in Hong Kong, some 40% of them are from Indonesia. At present, the agency fees in hiring them are partly shouldered by the helpers. That may change as the Indonesian government is planning to introduce the zero payment policy. Under the plan, employers have to pick up the tabs on the placement fees, which cover the Indonesian workers' transportation, training, and administration costs, amounting to some $9,000. That means employers need to pay more than $20,000 in agency fees to hire an Indonesian domestic helper. The Indonesian Recruitment Agency Association said Jakarta signed the new rule in March, which is set to take effect in September.
The main principle is to enhance the protection of Indonesian migrant workers and reduce their financial burdens. All placement costs now should be borne by employers.
Local hiring agencies for domestic helpers and employer representatives decried unfairness over the new policies. Teresa Liu, head of an employer agency, said apart from dampening hiring sentiments for helpers, the new rule is weakening employers' rights and interests, as employers also have to shoulder the air ticket costs and other miscellaneous expenses when dismissing a helper. Hiring agency representatives said they will liaise with the Labor Department in Hong Kong to help lobby against a zero payment proposal by the Indonesian government. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The torrential rain that pummeled Beijing and neighboring provinces over the past few days has eased off. Authorities say this round of rainstorms marked the heaviest precipitation Beijing has experienced in the past 140 years. Among the hardest hit districts was Beijing's suburb, Mentugo. This village was cut off from the outside world after being hit by rainstorm-triggered landslides. Same for some 900 workers and passengers aboard this train, which was stuck in Mentugo for 2 days. The residual circulation of Typhoon Doksuri's rain clouds continued to head north, bringing heavy downpours to Heilongjiang and parts of Jilin starting Wednesday. Welcome back. In the United States, former President Donald Trump was indicted on Tuesday for trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election in the run-up to the riot by his supporters at the U.S. Capitol. The Justice Department is holding Trump accountable for an unprecedented effort to block the transfer of presidential power and threaten American democracy. This as Trump campaigns to regain the presidency next year. Tracy Furness has more.
Former President Donald Trump is due in court on Thursday, hit with criminal charges for the third time in 4 months. The latest indictment arises from his efforts to overturn his 2020 U.S. election defeat. Covering the FBI, Justice Department and National Security for AP, Eric Tucker explains.
This is an indictment that focuses on a very turbulent period between his November 2020 loss to Democrat Joe Biden and the January 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol. And this indictment alleges that Donald Trump lost the election and knew that he lost the election, but nonetheless for 2 months engaged in repeated scheme after scheme to work to overturn the results so that he could cling to power.
Trump quickly responded to the indictment on X, formerly known as Twitter, to air his grievances. Anyone else notice a pattern here? The corrupt bureaucrats of the Biden regime charged Trump literally the day after every single disastrous Biden crime family story. The indictment stated that it's not a crime to lie, as the First Amendment protects free speech, but Trump was trying to subvert the will of the people.
The indictment shows that Trump was not just lying about election fraud, but he used those lies in order to try to subvert the will of the people and to actually overturn the results of a lawful election. And so the indictment goes through in very painstaking detail how Trump was able to perpetuate this lie and knew indeed that it was a falsehood. And then to show how he systematically worked with other co-conspirators to try to perpetuate this lie.
And on the streets of New York, people seemed happy with the indictment.
It's wonderful. I'm thrilled because, the more, I don't know, some people say the indictments are working for him and some against him, but I looked at the paper today, and according to statistics, he's beating Biden by, a lot.
It was a long time coming. This should have happened a long time ago.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The United States has formally invited China's newly appointed Foreign Minister Wang Yi to Washington. China reappointed veteran diplomat Wang, who previously served as foreign minister from 2013 until 2022, last week. He replaced Qin Gang, who was removed from his post after just 7 months into the job. U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller did not say if China had accepted the invitation, but added that this was the White House's expectation. Foreign nationals lined up outside an airport in crisis-hit Niger's capital this morning, waiting for a third evacuation flight. The evacuations come as a regional bloc continued talks about its response to the coup that took place in the country last week. Daniel Rao tells us more.
French forces in Niger's capital, Niamey, evacuated hundreds of mostly French nationals to Paris on 2 flights on Tuesday. This following concerns that their citizens and other Europeans risked becoming trapped by last week's military coup, which ousted and detained President Mohamed Bazoum. The first of 2 French flights that landed in Paris overnight had 12 babies among 262 people aboard, most of them French citizens. Evacuees from Niger, Portugal, Belgium, Ethiopia and Lebanon were also on board. Italy and Spain are other countries to have announced evacuations for their citizens and other Europeans. An Italian military aircraft landed in Rome on Wednesday with 99 passengers. Among them were 21 Americans and civilians from elsewhere. The United States has yet to announce plans for an evacuation, however some Americans have left with the help of the Europeans. With the situation in the country remaining precarious, regional bloc ECOWAS has said it would use force against the junta if it didn't release and reinstate the president within a week. The announcement was immediately rejected by neighbouring Mali, Burkina Faso and Guinea, all of which are run by mutinous soldiers who toppled their governments. Mali and Burkina Faso's leaders said a military intervention in Niger would be tantamount to a declaration of war against them. The defence chiefs of ECOWAS's 15 members will meet in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, from Wednesday to Friday to discuss the next steps in resolving the crisis. At a virtual United Nations meeting, the UN Special Envoy for West Africa and the Sahel said efforts other than the threat of force are underway to restore democracy in Niger.
Different member states are preparing themselves to use force if necessary. But as I said, the situation is fluid, but there are these efforts of find a peaceful solution for the problem. Everybody is giving priority to these efforts. If measures are not taken or the situation is not reversed, it's very likely that the spread of terrorism in the region can increase.
Daniel Roll, TV News.
Back here at home, a think tank has suggested ways to make the Innovation and Technology Park in Santin more successful. The government has earmarked 627 hectares of the northern metropolis for development of the Santin Technofine, where over half of the land is still privately owned. Our Hong Kong Foundation suggested landowners take part in the development of the park, including the building of accommodation facilities. The think tank also suggested the government grant land to flagship enterprises to encourage them to set up operations in Hong Kong. It came up with the recommendations after studying successful technology parks on the mainland, Singapore, the UK, and the US. The former head of research of Our Hong Kong Foundation, Stephen Wong, is now head of the Chief Executive Policy Unit. And the first August supermoon graced the city's skies this morning. The next one, also known as the blue moon, will appear on August 30th. Local moon gazers were treated to a bright and clear moon at around 2 a.m. A supermoon occurs when the moon's orbit is closest to the Earth, making the moon larger than usual. People who miss the supermoon will still have another chance at the end of August when the second full moon appears. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.